and look ahead to the postseason. So let's get to a few other hot corner topics right off the jump here. Braun Pierzynski and Kratz with you today. So playoff tickets vary immensely in pricing. Our boy Bob Nightingale said there is a drastic interest in ticket prices during the MLB wildcard round. I'm going to dispute that based on what he just put below that. The Marlins
Welcome in to Red Corner, Blue Corner, right here on Stadium. That is my guy, Jake Butt, a captain for Michigan in 2016, Senior Class Award winner, outstanding senior. That's my guy right there.
You're well researched.
Yeah.
This was my former opponent, Buckeye great national champion, also a captain, Joshua Perry. Now we're opponents at times, but we're also colleagues, and we'll do a little bit of that today on the show.
Yeah, great teammates, certainly, but we like to get after it. We also want to bring you into the show. This is partly your show, and we want to make sure that you're involved, so hop in that YouTube chat there. It's always popping. We love the commentary from you, and we also want you to scan that QR code on the screen and check in on today's poll. Who will be the next Michigan State coach?
This should be interesting.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting one.
So, based on that conversation, it seems it's all speculation at this point.
Yes.
But I have to ask you something in particular, because it seems there's been a big-time push from the Michigan State fan base to hire Urban Meyer. So take a look at this poll from Spartan Tailgate. They said, do you accept Urban Meyer as your Lord and Savior? Is that what it's going to take to get him,
That's
Joshua?
a little bit far, man.
Any chance Urban goes to East Lansing?
I think it's about a 0% chance. Urban Meyer, people have speculated about whether he would have interest in this job. Should Michigan State have interest in him? I think maybe there might be a little bit on either side. Urban Meyer is a guy who would understand how to beat Michigan, right? So I think that matters to Michigan State fans. He's a guy who's had success in recruiting in the Midwest. He's won national titles in multiple spots. I also saw Urban over the weekend, and outside of talking football with myself and the other person we were with, he was on FaceTime a lot of the time with his grandchildren. Like, he's very into having that family time now. He's got a great job. You see him on TV every Saturday, and they pay him a ton of money to do it. It just doesn't feel like a move that he would want to make. And if I'm Michigan State and you want to avoid scandal, as much as I love Urban, there's been some scandal associated with my man's name.
I think Michigan State fans have a little bit of delusion on the perception of their program outside of East Lansing. Look, I get it. Mel Tucker, when he had Kenneth Walker, made a big-time splash, 11 wins. You felt that success, but what has it been outside of that? Why would Urban leave what he's currently doing to go to East Lansing in the current state of that program? We also don't know, do they have to pay out the rest of Mel Tucker's salary? Because it is a battle of resources at this point. I really think Michigan State, why not go after Nick Saban, right? It's not a likely scenario to happen. I think you have to consider, you're going to have to catch a coach on the uprising.
Yeah.
If I'm Urban, I'm not leaving my current gig at all.
No, and I'm glad we put this up. These are all the reasons why people are interested, right? Like, I mean, the time that I was at Ohio State playing for Urban, we were 50-4. We won 50 games over a 4-year span, only lost 4 games. National title included in that, Big Ten championship included in that. We were always in the conversation. People want that from Michigan State. You're not going to get it with him because he's not the guy to go with. And quite frankly, if I was that program, I would go with a younger, fresher guy who's more in tune to the way that things work nowadays. A guy who's got presence on social media and is a marketer of the program. A guy who can really connect with recruits and also knows how to leverage the boosters in the fan base so you can build up a proper NIL collective. I think I saw somewhere this week where they had to cancel some of the contracts through the NIL collective because the funding wasn't there. Those are the things they should be worried about, not trying to get a coach who's in retirement to leave TV and come out of retirement to coach their team.
That collective, it said 4L, for life. Not for life, not for life. Think about D'Antonio. My last comment on this. Think about D'Antonio and what made him successful. Look, no one was better at leveraging outside disrespect than D'Antonio.
Yes.
Those guys were ready to play. He took the 2 stars and the 3 stars and the no stars and got them to play like 5 stars. That's what's required to win, particularly right now in East Lansing, because I don't think this is a sexy, attractive place for recruits. You're going to need a coach to be able to leverage some of that outside perception.
And the sexiness is going down as soon as we get the 4 additions to the Big Ten as well. And that's a realistic part of the way that this thing is going. I think you're right. Like, it's the idea of if you're an Ohio kid who's getting recruited by Michigan State, well, Ohio State didn't want you, and Michigan really didn't want you. If you're a Michigan kid sitting there in state, it was like, well, Michigan certainly didn't want you. Don't you want to get back at both of those programs? I think there's a formula there. For all the Spartan fans out there, I understand where your head is at. This ain't going to happen, so you should start looking for a different coach. But I want to get into some more of these comments. Keep them rolling here on YouTube. We had one from yesterday that I thought was super intriguing. Jake and I feel differently about this. It's from Nolan Howley. He's asking, Rutgers in 3 years or Nebraska in 3 years? Jake Butt, I'm going to give you the floor on this one first.
Yeah, I think, to me, I'm shocked we have a debate, Joshua.
Why are you shocked?
Because I think this is an easy choice, Nebraska in 3 years. Isn't this what we signed up for when we talked about Matt Rule coming to Nebraska? He's got a history of turning around programs. It's just taken 2 or 3 years. So by that measure, don't be a prisoner of the moment and think about what you're seeing right now for Nebraska. Think about where they'll be for 3 years. What we just kind of talked about, too, is this landscape of college football right now. It's a resource-driven battle. Well, let's just be real here. Nebraska has significantly more resources than Rutgers has, and that's going to play into their recruiting, their ability to leverage the transfer portal, and their ability to have future success.
You know, the Nebraska thing is intriguing. Like, I'm totally there with you on the resources, and I think that is a big part of why programs have success. Texas A&M is a program that has a lot of resources. They recruited really well. Where's the success? And maybe it's because they have the wrong head coach, and Matt Rule certainly does have a proven track record. Jimbo also won a national title. So who's to say that it actually works from that regard? I also look at Nebraska, who is a program that heavily relies on the history. Nobody gives a damn about the history anymore. This is a program that was relevant when I was a toddler. And they had some success, certainly, when they first entered the Big Ten. It has not been like that. I look at Rutgers as a team that is currently building right now. I look at the recruiting footprint that they're in. When you talk about a 5-hour radius driving from Rutgers, you can get, obviously, the kids in New York. You have the DMV area available to you. You have Pennsylvania available to you. When I look at that same thing for Nebraska, I mean, Minneapolis, St. Paul, like, you can get into parts of Missouri. It doesn't feel like the same recruiting base that they have. And then ultimately, I look at the landscape that you just talked about. If I were to ask you the question, whose path gets easier when the 4 teams are added and we go away from divisions, what is the answer to that? Because I think this is a pretty simple answer. It's Rutgers, because they don't have to run into Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Michigan State, and Maryland every single season. They'll get some of those teams, but not every year. Nebraska had the easy path already playing in the West.
Okay, for every reason you just said, you lead me to a thought I just had. Let's just say Rutgers does have this kind of success. One thing we know about Nebraska with Matt Rule, he's not going anywhere. That's the plan today, tomorrow, and for the next 3 or 4 years. Yes, it is, at least in the context of this question. Do we know that for Rutgers? There's a lot of schools that might be looking at Schiano and saying, man, he's doing a damn good job
this is the
out
only
there
place Greg
with the
Schiano wanted
Scarlet
to
Knights.
be.
But until someone comes calling, and says, hey, wait a second, you've done a damn good job out here for Rutgers. I want to double your salary.
In 2 years, if Texas says, we want to take you because Steve Sarkisian's somewhere else, Matt Rule come to Texas, you don't think he's going to take that job? In 2 years, if Nick Saban retires and Alabama's open and they say Matt Rule's done a hell of a job at Nebraska, we want to hire that man. You don't think he's going anywhere?
I think Bama's a little bit different story in this context. I think in 2 years, if Texas comes after Nebraska, that tells you two things. One, Nebraska's succeeding,
yes.
and two, in Texas isn't. So Nebraska would say, why would you want to take over that dumpster fire? What do they offer? And let's see if we can make this a little bit compatible. Now, Alabama's a different story. I don't think Rutgers has that type of leverage to keep Schiano sticking around.
I think Schiano is a guy who understands where his bread is buttered. He's been at Rutgers before. He's had success there. He is a guy that understands how to make that thing work there. Quite frankly, he's prickly. He's not for everybody. I don't think he's leaving that job, even if they take off as a program. It's going to be really interesting to see, right? Because we're going to have the next couple of years to talk about this. But the idea of Rutgers being able to build, like going 4-1 this early in the season means that they're probably making a bowl this year, right? Great place for them to be. Nebraska, they're going to be starting from scratch. Maybe they should avoid the bowl game so they can get out on the road and do a little bit more recruiting in December.
This was never about this year. I think when you look at Rutgers, I think their ceiling is right about here. Now, Nebraska, their floor has been here. Maybe it's a little bit more even for Rutgers. I think the ceiling for Nebraska is much higher for Rutgers going forward, Joshua.
I'm not arguing any of that whatsoever, but if I'm Rutgers, I see nothing but opportunity. And in the landscape of the way things are changing for Nebraska, even if we do think we have the right coach and we have the right NIL program, our path automatically gets higher because we don't have a Big Ten West schedule primarily to rely on. So we'll see what happens from there, but this will be something really fun to watch. But I want to continue the conversation on Nebraska here. Cornhuskers off to a 2-3 start. Not a great start for our guy Matt Rule out there. And he's trying to avoid a trend that has plagued recent coaches in Lincoln. The past 3 have had a losing record in their first year at the helm. But Rule says there's hope for this team.
We have some really good players. They're going to play in the National Football League. They need to show up. They need to show up. The good players from Michigan, I know, I can tell you who they were because I watched them on the field, okay? Our really good players need to show up. And that's not me calling anybody out. That's me giving them confidence that I believe they can do it. There's a big difference, right? I'm not calling anybody out by name. We have guys that I believe on our team can absolutely wreck a game, and I want to see them wreck the game.
I mean, Rule said that he's not calling anybody out. It sounded like he was calling guys out.
Oh, he's absolutely calling guys out. I wouldn't backtrack it. Good, call them out. Call them out. Yeah, they gotta play better. I remember when Coach Harbaugh first came to Michigan, and we were off 5-7 season.
Yep.
We were way below standard.
Yep.
And he looked at us in the first spring ball and he said, "Guys, I think you got this twisted. I don't need 100 of you. I need 12 warriors, 11 on offense and 11 on defense. The rest of you can leave." That's the point that Nebraska's at right now.
Sure.
If you have potential and you are not reaching your potential, you either make the decision to find a way to realize your potential or you leave somewhere else. Nebraska and Matt Rule have to get this ship steered in one direction, and you're either part of the winning or you're part of the past. If you're part of the past, there's the door.
Did I ever tell you the story about Urban Meyer in my first days in Columbus?
Please.
Okay, so I enrolled there in January of 2012. Urban officially started in December of 2011, January 2012. So I'm an early enrollee, 17 years old, from Olentangy High School right outside of Columbus, realizing my dream to play for the Ohio State Buckeyes. About 5 days into my tenure, Urban looks at me and says, "I didn't recruit you. You were a guy I would have never recruited. You're not fast enough. You're not twitchy enough. You're not tough enough. I don't think you'll ever play here at the Ohio State University." It seemed like it worked out when he called me out, because I eventually became a guy who started 40 games there and, won a national title, was a captain of that team, led the team in tackles on a national championship team, became an NFL draft pick. Sometimes that type of friction is good. I want coaches who are honest. And I agree with you. Don't try to hide behind them not calling guys out. I think you need to call them out. And quite frankly, I think you need to be real about what you're saying. And the guy who I played for, he used to call those dudes out by name. He would go into the media and say, such and such is not performing to the level that I think he's capable of. And it's a problem for us and it's holding our team back. So for Matt Rule, I think this is a good thing. He needs to be totally honest with this team in private. And the other thing, too, is I think there are a lot of people who are interested in that program. donors, boosters who are hearing that and saying, this guy's got the right mentality.
Yeah, they're watching, they're observing. Listen, growth, in order to grow, you need a challenge, which generates a response, right? What you're basically saying right here is Urban challenge you, Jim Harbaugh challenge us, Matt Rule, don't backtrack it. Let them know this hasn't been good enough. That's not a hot take for your locker room to hear. They know it, at least they should. If they don't, there's the door. Challenge them, force a response. Like you said, there's alignment within the program. People want to see the success, but they need to see some progress.
And the biggest thing, too, on top of all that is he needs to make sure he shows up for his guys every day.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, this has been a lot of Big Ten talk, right?
Yeah.
I think we got something you guys have been waiting for coming up on the other side. It's the clash everyone's been waiting for. SEC versus Big Ten. Our guys from Rivals Down South are waiting in the wings. Like we said, it's the Big Ten versus the SEC. That's next here on Red Corner, Blue Corner.
Red Corner, Blue Corner is back right here on Stadium. And yesterday we asked you, our viewers, to caption this photo of Jim Harbaugh and Matt Rule, and you all delivered once again. Now, before revealing the winner, let's get to some honorable mentions. Karma sent this. What happened? I blacked out after the first drive. That's a pretty good one right there. I mean,
solid one.
Yeah, Michigan had that game in control from the beginning. Bob Hill went the fashion route. He said they're haggard. I find they have a skosh more room in the seat, which I like. I think it's in reference to your boy's pants of choice.
Oh, he did go to Lulu. He does have a little bit more.
Oh, so he stepped
room
it up.
in the seat, as they say.
Yeah,
yes.
a little panache there.
A little brand change.
But we got to get to the winning caption here. This came from Chris Bowers. If you're struggling this hard, man, buy a kid a cheeseburger. It'll give you a few games off. How do you feel about that?
I think they may be onto something, huh? As we were just continuing the Nebraska conversation, what do you need? Maybe you buy a couple cheeseburgers. It seems to have worked for Michigan.
Yeah.
Pay a small price up front.
Yeah. Yeah, get your,
win down the line.
Assistant coaches some experience driving the ship for a week. I definitely like that. Now, make sure you tune in next week for another caption contest. Again, we're giving out prizes to whoever wins that one. But I want to get to an interesting post from some guy named Mark Carman, probably from his basement somewhere in Wolverine land. 3 teams in the AP Top 25 not played a team who has received at least 1 vote in the AP or coaches poll. Michigan, Fresno State, and Air Force would be those teams. Wolverines, soft schedule up to this point. You think it hurts them in the long run?
No, I don't. And really, this is what ends up happening is we start to blame, we see something like that, we blame the schools instead of the system that we've created. And we're going to, this is why I'm so excited for an expanded playoff, because a 4-team playoff incentivizes this type of behavior. Because what you tell me with the 4-team playoff is you have 0 room for error. If you have 1 loss, okay, maybe, but you need something else. If you have 2 losses, you're done. So why would a school with national championship aspirations try to schedule more challenging games? Now, it's great if you win them, but you risk the potential to losing. So at this point in time, no. And the truth is for Michigan, those last 3 games are bangers. Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State.
Yeah.
That's not an easy 3-game stretch.
No, it's not. I want to correct. There was AP Top 35 in that tweet there. Here's the thing for me is I agree with you on the idea that you are not incentivized in the current landscape to want to schedule hard, right? Because we've never seen a 2-loss team make it into the college football playoff. Frankly, teams that lose out of conference games have rarely made it into the 4-team college football playoff. But I'm not convinced that expanding the field to 12 makes anybody want to schedule any damn harder. Like nobody, just because you can get the loss doesn't mean anybody actually wants to lose a game.
True.
Right? Like to me, it just doesn't feel like an expanded playoff fixes this issue. I think that teams are going to continue with their scheduling philosophies. Fans be damned because they don't want to lose games.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I hear what you're saying. I'm hopeful, though, that in the world of money and resources, it's a mutual understanding that when you schedule better games, there's more viewership, there's more ad space, the money increases. In 12-team playoffs, there will be teams with 2 losses that get into the playoffs, so you do have a little bit more flexibility in that sense.
No, I'm totally there with it. And I think that there's also this idea for me that there are many teams that start off the season not so great. They improve throughout the year. And so you should be rewarded for that as well.
Well, here's a thought. Okay. Maybe they should follow in the SEC's book.
Ooh.
Maybe they should just have 1 less conference game, and maybe they should schedule an FCS team right before their biggest rivalry week. Maybe that's the recipe to success.
Gotta figure it out.
Because, of course, Michigan, and we can talk about their easy schedule, they've crept ever closer to Georgia when it comes to odds to winning the national title. I personally, if I had to pick, I think they have passed Georgia.
You mean the Georgia team that gave up 21 points to UAB, that Georgia team?
Yeah, that Georgia team that has not looked like a serious three-peat offender this year. But hey, listen, they're still the favorite to win it all.
Sure.
Wolverines, Buckeyes, obviously sitting right behind them. So with that,
only one SEC
why don't we
team
bring in some guys, Joshua? Let's bring in our friends, the hosts of the Rivals Down South, T-Bob and 2-time national champion AJ McCarron. Guys, what's going on?
Okay, first off, put some spec to my boy AJ's resume. It's a 3-time Natty winner, 2-time starter, but 3 to the name, okay?
Okay.
So let's get
Fair
that straight off the bat here. Hey, y'all ever mess with Bill Connolly's S&P Plus rankings, his analytical system? It's basically a predictive measure. It's an excellent resource for kind of figuring out, okay, who's good, who's not. The Big Ten is hot garbage. y'all are top heavy. Y'all are like the girl from what is it, Total Recall with 3 boobs. It's
okay.
Yeah, you got Michigan, you got Ohio State, and you got Penn State. You got dead weight otherwise, okay? You got no junk in the trunk. The SEC, yeah, we're not as good all the way across this year, but top to bottom, still the superior conference. I mean, look, Connolly's got the SEC 4th out of the 5 Power 5s, dude.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, right? Oh, yeah, we don't have as many teams at the top. I mean, Bama's making their way back. I'll totally give credit on that.
Yep.
You got an A&M team that was dismantled by Miami. Let's not forget about that. A 2-loss LSU that I want to get into because this is an issue that they're still in the AP top 25 right now. Auburn, trash. Arkansas, trash. Mississippi State, trash. Florida, fraudulent. Tennessee, fraudulent. I mean, we could go down the list here. Like, I understand, right? Big Ten, everybody's going to talk about the 3 big brands that are going hard right now, and I totally get it. But let's take inventory of the whole SEC, too. And Georgia doesn't even look like the same team right now. What are we talking about?
Bro, in the Big Ten West right now. Go ahead, AJ, get it.
I think the biggest thing, though, the fact that they're number 1 and they still haven't lost, so you can't knock them for that. The biggest complaint I have about the Big Ten is they're supposed to have a top team every year. And when it comes to the big games, they fall apart. Like, especially during my time, there was a huge run of just national champions that were coming from the SEC. I think it was 6 years in a row, something along those lines. But, I mean, every year we were supposed to play Michigan or – I would put Notre Dame up in the Big Ten country for a while, but they were supposed to be this superior team, and it ended up not working out for them. So you can't knock the SEC until you beat them.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is what happens, and this is where the argument absolutely crumbles. You guys have done a good job, the SEC, of winning the national championship. And sure, it's been Georgia and Bama and LSU and Auburn. But what ends up happening is the rest of the SEC gets to ride off of that singular success. Now, I get Big Ten hasn't been great this year. It's been down in terms of the meat of the conference, but the meat of the conference has been better than the SEC historically. And once again, we want to talk about a path to the conference, one less conference game, and a glorified bye week before your big. Bama has 2 bye weeks before LSU and the Iron Bowl.
So I want to piggyback too, because AJ said something. Just talking about Georgia, you can't knock them because they haven't lost. Ohio State fell in the polls after beating a conference opponent in week 1 by 20 damn points. So I'm really not trying to hear that. First off, and then second off, in 2012, that should have been a Notre Dame Ohio State national championship game, but we had a bowl ban, so I'm gonna leave that at that.
Look, Ohio State, you just worry about beating Michigan. Okay, you got no beef with us. You look at Jake right there, JP, and that's who you need to be worried about. Because I saw the Wolverines take care of business in the big house and bad weather and in perfect weather in the shoe last year. Okay?
Yeah, just like Ole Miss did. Just like Ole Miss did. You gave up 6.5 yards per carry this past week. Let's not forget about that. Let's not forget about what happened on prime time in week 1 against Florida State from the big mighty ACC. Let's not forget.
In 2012, you could have replaced. In 2012, you could have replaced Ohio State with Notre Dame, and it still would have been the same outcome.
All right, catch these guys coming up in a few. That'll do it for us. Take care, y'all.